Okay, so we're going to start by looking at some more complicated quadratics to sketch now. So in these ones, we've got a C term, which means that we can't just take out a common factor and solve from there. We need to use factorising or quadratic formula to find our answer. And from there as well, finding the turning points is going to become a little bit more complicated too, especially when we do completing the square. So with this first one, we're going to start off, we're going to do this the exact same way as we did the last ones. So firstly, we've got our x-intercepts. We're trying to find those. So we're going to let f of x equal to 0. So we've got x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals to 0. Now from here, we need to think about, firstly, are there two numbers that multiply to give us negative 7 and that add to give us negative 6? And hopefully, you can definitely see that there are two. Okay, you've got negative 7 and positive 1 that multiply to give negative 7, and negative 7 plus positive 1 add to give you negative 6. Okay, so that works as our factors. So we can chuck those into our brackets. We end up with x minus 7 and x plus 1 equal to 0. From there we can solve using our null factor theorem. So x minus 7 equals 0. X plus 1 equals 0, so therefore x is equal to 7, positive 7, or x is equal to negative 1 by bringing those onto the other side. So they're our two intercepts, okay? We've got one at negative 1, okay, and one at 3, 4, I think that's positive 7 there. If I get any of these wrong, it's just because it's hard to see the grid from where I am. I think I need glasses, you know. How it is. Okay, so we've got positive 7, negative 1. So there are two intercepts. The next thing is we need to find our y-intercept. Now again, this one isn't going to be going through 0, 0 like the last one, because now we've got that c value on the end that changes our intercept. So to find our y-intercept, okay, x is equal to 0. So now we're finding f of 0, okay, which is 0 squared minus 6 times 0 minus 7. Okay, obviously that's going to be, those two parts are going to be 0, so we're just going to be left with negative 7. Okay, and your y-intercept is always going to be that last number, but I do think it's good practice to still go through, sub in the x, and find that value. So now we're going to have negative 7, so 3, I think that's 6, okay, negative 7. Okay, so I think that's around about where our y-intercept is going to be, okay? And hopefully what you see here is this is going to be quite a steep curve, okay? And our turning point is going to be somewhere around here. It's going to be lower than negative 7, somewhere around here, halfway between our two x-intercepts. Right, so the next thing is to find that midpoint. So to do that, remember that when we're finding the x value for the turning point, and we're going to do this both ways, both using completing the square and using the midpoint idea. To find our x values, we add together our two values, so 7 plus negative 1 divided by 2. Okay, 7 plus negative 1 is 6 divided by 2. Okay, so 3. So 3 is going to be where our turning point is. And to find our y value, we find f of 3, okay, which is 3 squared minus 6 times 3 minus 7. So that's 9 minus 18 minus 7. Okay, negative 18 minus 7, that's negative 25. And negative 25 plus 9 is negative 16. Okay, so our turning point is going to be at 3, which is here, and negative 16, okay, well that's 7, that means that's 10, negative 13, okay, I think it's going to be around about here. I think that's our turning point there at that point. Okay, again, I might be wrong, I just haven't got a scale on there to check. When you're doing it, definitely find it. You're going to have it in front of you, you can look at it, you can label it, but I'm just trying to do it as quickly as possible. Okay, I want to show you the other way, which is using the completing the square formula too. Okay, so we're still going to end up with 3 and negative 16 as our answer, that's not going to change. But when we're completing the square, we've got f of x equals x squared minus 6x minus 7. Now remembering we've got that part in brackets there, we're going to have the minus 7 on the end over here. We've still got the x in there. Now, remember that we take half of our middle term, so half of negative 6 is negative 3. Okay, that goes in that bracket. And then, because we're adding on that plus 9 from the 3 squared, we also then need to minus 9 from our... we then need to minus 9 as well to cancel out that plus 9. and then we end up with our full equation, which is x minus 3 all squared, -9 minus 7 is -16. So our turning point coordinates are at +3, -16. Okay, again, remembering that when that comes out of the brackets, it's positive. Last thing is we're just going to join up our points to sketch the quadratic. So we're coming through here. Oh, I hate it when it's so steep. That's the hardest to draw. Okay, there we go. Oh gosh, that's probably the worst one I've done so far. Well, there you go. Again, hopefully yours is better. Okay. Last one. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to pause this, rub it out, so we've got a little bit more room to do the last one. So just give me a sec. Okay, so last one. So a couple of things here. Obviously, we've got that -x squared. So we're expecting that our quadratic is now going to be an upside down quadratic, frowny downy, as opposed to a smiley diley. And okay, well, so we'll just go from there. So first thing again is x-intercepts. So we're going to let f of x equal to 0. Because we're finding our x-intercepts, and I should write x-int there, f of x equals 0, so we've got -x squared minus 8x plus 10 equals to 0. Now, a couple of little tricky things here. We've got that -x squared. So if we were trying to look at using a factor theorem, we could take out the negative, so we've got x squared plus 8x minus 10 equals to 0. Now you've got to think about two numbers that multiply to make 10, and add to make 8. Now, the only two numbers that multiply, there's only two combinations of things that multiply to make 10. One is 10 and 1, and neither of those are going to add to make 8. And the other one's 5 and 2, and neither of those are going to add to make 8 either. So we're just going to ignore this little bit for a second here, okay, because that doesn't work with finding our combinations. And we're going to use quadratic formula. So remembering the quadratic formula song, we've got -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. If you want to pause it and listen to the quadratic formula song, go ahead. So -b, -8 is +8, plus or minus. Now I'm just going to put this in as 8 squared, because we know that -8 squared and 8 squared are the same thing. And you can even chuck that in just to 64, which I might do there, minus 4 times -1, okay, because that's got a -1 out the front of that x squared, times 10, all over 2 times a, so 2 times -1, which is -2. All right, from here, we've now got 8 plus or minus the square root of, now, -4 times -1 is +4, and +4 times 10 is 40, and 40 plus 64 is 104. So we've got the square 8 plus or minus the square root of 104, and please just chuck that in your calculator straight away if you would like, all over -2, okay, which means that we have and we've got two solutions. The first one, the positive solution, 8 plus the square root of 104 over -2, is about 9, is around about 9 as a whole number. It's not exactly a whole number, it's actually 9.0990195, etc., etc. Okay, so it's not perfect, but we're going to put it in as around about, it's pretty close to 9. So we're going to have 9, and then we're going to have 8 minus the square root of 104 over 2. Now, and that is around about -1. Okay, it's not exactly that. When we put it on the graph, we're not going to put it in as exactly. It's actually, again, -1.099, etc. Now, remembering that if we're going to simplify this as a surd, if you ask for a surd answer, 4 goes into 104 26 times. So that would be 8 plus or minus the square root of, 8 plus or minus 2 root, and that's the 2 because you've taken the 4 out, 2 root 26 on -2. Okay, and then you could divide that through if you wanted to. But because we're graphing, we want to know where it fits in relation to whole numbers. So we don't really want surds in our answer when we're talking about graphing quadratics. So I'm going to put this in as 9, just slightly, so it's at 3, 6, Okay, I think that's about 9. So I'm going to put this in as just slightly above 9 here. So we've got one intercept there, and the next one is going to be slightly bigger than -1, that there. Okay, so they're going to be our 2 intercepts. All right. The next thing we're going to do is find the y-intercept. So y-intercept, okay, x equals 0. So that means f of 0 is equal to -0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 10. Okay, and that's positive 10. So we've got a y-intercept at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 there. Okay, and then last thing is we're going to find the turning point. So what we're going to do here is we're going to find the turning point using completing the square, not using the plus or minus method. And the reason for that is because you don't have perfect whole numbers for these intercepts. So by doing the adding the two together and finding the midpoint, it's going to be not as accurate for finding the y coordinate as it would be if we looked at doing the completed square. And I actually think in this case you're going to find the completed square easier, maybe anyway. Okay, so for finding the turning point, okay, we've got f of x. Now again, remember, we're going to take out that negative out front. Okay, we don't want that. So we're going to have negative x squared plus 8x minus 10. Okay, so we've taken that negative out of everything. Now the next step, remembering, is to take half of that middle term, and we're going to put that in the brackets. So now we've got negative out the front of everything. Okay, x plus 4, that comes from half of the 8, all squared. Now we've added in a plus 4. So we're also going to minus 4. We've added in 4 squared. So we're also going to minus 4 squared, which is 16. So minus 16 minus 10. Okay. Now we have negative x squared, x plus 4, all squared, minus 26. Okay, and that's that big bracket outside. And then we're going to expand that negative sign back in again. So we're going to have negative x plus 4, all squared, plus 26. And our turning point is then at the coordinates -4. Oh, sorry, that's a negative 4, so that would be positive 4 in this case, okay, because you've got that negative out the front as well. So positive 4, positive 26. Okay, so they're nice whole numbers, so that's easy to work with. So that's better than taking the 2 coordinates of the turning point and trying to work the 2 intercepts and trying to work from that. Okay, so here you got 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think 26 is going to be on the graph because I think it only goes up to 20, but we'll just say 26 is around about up there. Okay, and now we can join it up. Okay, and there's the quadratic. Hopefully you can see from this how hard it is to draw using one of these pens. It's not actually that easy. It's quite easy to write. It's just like you don't have much room to actually draw. Anyway, there we go. So that's it. Have a go at some of the harder questions, and well done. Perfect.